Good morning, Reptilians. Welcome and welcome back to the channel. So a couple weeks ago, as you guys know by now, I upgraded Morty's tank into a giant 6-foot tank. What that means is that there is now a front opening Exoterra 40-gallon tank floating around my house, and of course someone's about to get that upgrade. So this week we are going to talk all about the setup for a leopard gecko in upgrading Percy's tank. Unlike with all my other setup videos where I'm just showing you what I'm personally doing to set up that tank, I'm actually going to go through and show you guys just how to set up for a leopard gecko in general. I've done leopard gecko care guides and stuff like that, and this is just kind of a more in-depth of just the setup section. So we're going to talk about tank size, we're going to talk about different things that you can use, different substrates you can use, all that. Yeah, I'm going to show you some of those things. This video is sponsored by iHeartGecko, so make sure to stay until the end of this video to find out all about this amazing company. Let's get started. Alright, so we are starting with Morty's old 40-gallon Exoterra tank. This is a 36-inch by 18-inch by, I think it's 16 inches high. This is the large, low Exoterra. Minimum tank size for a leopard gecko, at least here in the United States, is a 20-gallon long. That is what she has been in up to this point, but we are giving her a bigger tank today. And the cool thing about Exoterras is that they already come with backgrounds. This is Morty's old background. He destroyed it. If you see kind of towards the bottom there where it's more black. So I did go ahead and repaint this. I tried my best to match the colors and whatever, and I repainted it and then shellacked over it. And then still from Morty's days of being in this tank, the sides are blacked out with poster board just to make it feel more tight and secure. So let's talk about substrate. I have already put the tile down, and this is old tile. Some of it's from Percy's old tank, some of it's from Zaz's old tank. So this is already measured and it fits in and everything. But if you want to use tile in your tank, you can go to Home Depot and Lowe's and they can cut tile for you, or you can buy a tile cutter from Home Depot, Lowe's, Amazon, anywhere like that, and you can cut it yourself. But if you are using this Exoterra tank, you will have to cut some of the bottom off of this for the tile to fit underneath it. We just used a foam cutter because these backgrounds are foam, and that worked, but just something to keep in mind. This is my preferred substrate because it is easy to just take out and clean, just spray it down, wipe it down, and it is clean. But you do have a few different options. So one option is a non-adhesive shelf liner, which does the same thing that this does. It's just nice and flat and easy to clean. Carpets like these are a very popular option. These are super old. I haven't used these in actual years, but these are a popular option. I tend to recommend against these because if you look really closely, these are made out of just a whole bunch of tiny little fibers, and leopard geckos have tiny little toes with tiny little nails, and they tend to get stuck inside of these fibers, and a lot of times it causes those toenails to be just completely pulled off, which is painful. It can cause infections and all that. Another option that I don't see very often, but I have seen a little bit, is AstroTurf, and that is something that I used to use in Zaz's tank all the time. It is made for outside, so you can just spray it down to clean it off. I hesitate to use these with leopard geckos because if you look down in there, you can still see little areas where their little toes could get caught, but I still felt like it was important to mention because I have seen this in a few leopard gecko tanks. You also have the option of using paper towels. Paper towels are going to be a very quick and easy cleanup. Just grab a paper towel, toss it out, and you're good to go. You also, of course, have the option to do things like bioactive setups, which would have a loose substrate. There are lots of different brands to choose from here. You have the BioDude, Lugardi. If you have access to it, Arcadia's is absolutely fantastic, I've heard. Homemade mixes, there are lots of options there. But just make sure that if you go in this direction, you are paying attention that you are not setting up for a tropical species, that you are setting up for a lower humidity arid species, and you are planning your cleanup crew and your plants according to that. But what I like to do is to do the main substrate as tile and then put a digging area into a side of the tank. And again, this was her old tank here. This is what that digging side looked like, but instead of doing the siliconing the plexiglass in, we're actually just going to use a Sterilite bin this time. This is a Sterilite bin that we have cut cut down so that it fits, and we've sanded the edges down so there's no sharp edges. And this is just going to make it a little bit easier. Again, didn't want to mess up this semi-expensive tank with silicone and plexiglass, so we're making something that's going to be just removable, and that'll also make cleanup for that easier instead of me having to vacuum up substrate anytime I wanted to change it out. Next up, we're going to talk about heating this tank. So you guys know that my preferred option for leopard geckos is a heat pad with a thermostat. Like every upgrade video ever, I realized at this point that this heating pad is too small, so I will be getting a bigger one. I'm not sure why it doesn't register with me that I need to order bigger heat pads for bigger tanks, but I do this every time. Anyways, really quickly, the way that this works is really easy. The heat pad goes on the bottom of the tank under the glass, and the probe is going to sit on top of the tile or on wherever your leopard gecko is going to be laying. It is going to tell the heat pad to turn off when the temperature gets to whatever you have set it to. There are other ways to heat this tank though. I prefer this because leopard geckos are crepuscular, meaning that they're not going to be out in the middle of the day basking to heat up. This gives them the ability to hide in a cave and heat up just like they would in the wild. You also have the options of ceramic heat emitters, basking bulbs. Arcadia makes something called a deep heat projector. Just make sure that you monitor that temperature and that they do have a hot spot or a basking spot of at least 90 degrees, between 90 and 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and that you are using a thermostat or a temperature gun or something to monitor that. If you use a heat pad, you have to use a thermostat, but using a temperature gun, it's always very recommended to double check those temperatures. And because this background isn't being pushed into place by loose substrate like it was in Morty's tank, I am using some double-sided mounting tape, just 2 pieces, to make sure that that background stays in place because we don't want it toppling over onto her. And to secure the temperature probe down in place, I am just using some black electrical tape. I'm using this because it's not super sticky, so if it bends up and she gets on it, it's not going to pull off scales or hurt her or anything, but it is sticky enough to hold this in place. And now we just put a hot hide on top of this. I am still using the same one that she's had for quite a while. It was one off of Amazon, but she still fits in it. She can get her whole body in there perfectly and hide, so we still go with that one. It is very important that leopard geckos have 3 hides at least. So we have this hot hide. We also are going to have a humid hide. Humid hides are very important for leopard geckos because this is where they're going to go when they need to shed. This is another one off of Amazon, one that Percy has used for years, and it is filled with sphagnum moss, but you also can go a different route if you want and use Tupperware. This is just Tupperware from Dollar Tree. You would just cut a little hole in the front here so that they can go in and out, a lot like the other hide, and then you could fill this with sphagnum moss, or you can just fill it with wet paper towels. And then you have a very quick and easy $1 humid hide for your leopard gecko. And then at this point, it's just a matter of filling your tank with a bunch of enrichment. Enrichment is so important for reptiles. It is what gives your reptiles something to do, and that makes them happy. And a big part of Percy's enrichment is her dig box because she absolutely loves to dig. I use this Scott's topsoil for her dig box. Just make sure that whatever you're using does not have any kind of manure or fertilizers or vermiculite or anything like that in there. In this tank, she has multiple places to hide. She has different textures to rub against. She has different levels of height that she can climb. She has leaves that she can ruffle around in. There is so much for her to do in this tank. And at this point, I'm almost done, but I just decided to change out the hammock that she had, which was one of those mesh hammocks, with an all fabric hammock, just because I was worried that her toes were going to get stuck in that plastic mesh. And this one is just a solid fabric. The other one looked better, but this one will probably be safer. Hammocks are not a necessity in a leopard gecko setup, but it just adds to the enrichment. As for lighting, I do use UVB lighting with my leopard geckos. This is just a Reptisun, the spiral kind. I will probably be switching her to a linear UVB light because this tank is a lot bigger, but for right now, this is what she's using. But if you do not use one of these lights, then make sure that you are properly supplementing their diet with vitamin D3. And then the last thing I like to keep in my leopard gecko's tanks is a bowl of calcium. This is calcium without D3, just pure calcium. And that is because leopard geckos, when they are low on calcium, are able to go up to calcium dishes and just consume calcium if they feel like they need it. So I like to keep that dish in there. And another useful tool, especially if you are brand new to keeping reptiles or brand new to keeping a leopard gecko, is a thermometer / hygrometer. I don't really use one of these anymore. That's just because I've had them for years and I know kind of where the humidity stays here and where the temperatures in the house stay. But this is very, very useful if you are getting one for the first time. And that's it. Of course, we have another video where I redo a leopard gecko's tank and they're shedding, but this is her completed tank and she really seems to enjoy it. She explored it for quite a while, and yeah, let's just watch some footage of her hanging out in her tank. And that is it. Hopefully this helped you in setting up for your leopard gecko, and it definitely helped me in setting up for my leopard gecko. Percy's so happy with all this new space, and yeah, I'm happy that I could give that to her. And of course, just a disclaimer, I'm not an expert. This is just what I do and what has worked for me now and in the past. People do things differently. People have different opinions on basically everything to do with everything with leopard care, but I just talk about what works for me. As I said at the beginning of this video is sponsored by I Heart Geckos. I Heart Geckos is such a fantastic company that makes conversion kits for old aquariums that you may have laying around. So those conversion kits allow you to take that old aquarium and turn it into a vertically standing front opening tank for arboreal animals. And they also have a couple of different sizes of horizontal front opening tank conversion kits as well, which is super cool. I absolutely love these conversion kits. I have one on Goliath, my girl gecko's tank, and I've had it on there for a little over a year now. And her tank is bioactive. It grows plants wonderfully. There's enough ventilation. And recently I found a whole bunch of baby isopods in there for the second time. So that tank is doing fantastic. I cannot speak highly enough about this product and this company as a whole. They are absolutely wonderful. If you happen to go to iheartgeckos.com and support this awesome company, make sure to put Elle's Reptiles in the How Did You Hear About Us box so that way they know that you guys are coming from here. Thank you so much to I Heart Geckos for sponsoring this video. As always, if you've not already, please feel free to follow me on my other socials and like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications every single time I put out a new video, which is every Sunday and some Wednesdays. This week's Instagram shout out goes to Livestrong321 for following me on Instagram and going through and liking a whole bunch of my stuff. This week's subscriber shout out goes to Caitlin Bailey for always being super supportive, and she lended me some wonderful videos and pictures of her abronia last week. Thank you guys both so much for being super supportive. You are the bee's knees. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye. Hair's doing something crazy.